They'd waited for her to return home for a birthday party. Now they visited the scene of her murder. Her husband, Paul, had to break the news to their children.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Just didn't know how to say it, literally. And sort of how do you explain to your kids that the mother's dead? Once I'd sort of sat them down and sort of told them it, I think it would have disbelieved the kids. It just wasn't, you know, because obviously with them being so young, you know, no one's experienced sort of death within family sort of thing, and it's just all tears and crying and whatever else, and it's just like you think, God, you know, it's how do you go on from here, sort of thing.
The shooting brought home the dangers faced by British police officers on a daily basis.
When one of your colleagues is killed and another one's shot and is in the hospital, your world kind of comes crashing down, that you realise that this could have been any one of us. A number of us got the call and requested to go to the job. Any one of us could have been there, and it does make you feel very vulnerable.
As well as Sharon's murder, detectives had a vicious and violent robbery to investigate. This might also hold vital clues to the killers.
The crime is horrendous. Members of staff, visitors to the premises are actually tied up using cable ties. They're forced onto the ground, they're pistol whipped, and they're threatened to kill the youngest male, the youngest brother of the boys that work there. Now, as robberies go, it doesn't get much more serious than this.
Despite being held at gunpoint, the travel agents had secretly activated their silent panic alarm. It was this emergency call that brought Sharon and Teresa to the scene. As the robbers prepared to leave with just £5,000, the officers arrived at the shop door. Sharon and Teresa were immediately shot at point-blank range as the robbers escaped. Forensic teams scoured the shop and the street for clues. Inside, they found a laptop bag that the robbers used to conceal the guns. A knife wielded by one of the men. In the wall, a bullet fired by a MAC-10 submachine gun. And outside, 3 bullet casings, all fired from a 9mm handgun. As detectives worked around the clock at the scene, the team tasked with tracing the Toyota RAV4 received a call. It had been picked up by the Metropolitan Police in South London. Could this be the breakthrough they were looking for? A series of raids on houses and flats in the capital produced 6 suspects. An armed police convoy brought them back up the M1 to West Yorkshire for questioning.
Experience tells me that you don't automatically assume that they are involved. We know that somehow that vehicle's involved, and it's a huge amount of work to have to start eliminating them or implicating them as being involved.
It soon became clear the car was being used as a pool car by criminals. But the 6 suspects had nothing to do with the car at the time of the shooting. It was a setback for the team.
People are suddenly realising that you've arrested 6 people in connection with this horrific crime, and suddenly you have to start bailing people as well. And people start to think, oh, where are we going with this investigation now?
It was back to the drawing board for detectives. Luckily, key witness PC Teresa Milburn was making a remarkable recovery. She was ready to return home to be with her husband Chris and 15-year-old son James, and she desperately wanted to help the investigation.
Came out of hospital and then did 2 days of video interviews which are done with key witnesses. Reliving everything again. That was very emotional, very hard. But you need to do it. You need to do that in order to assist the investigation. And yeah, I had injuries, I was in pain.
In the rear of the vehicle on this side, we also recovered a Ribena pack, which allowed us to undertake fingerprints and DNA work on that. On this side of the vehicle, we also recovered a water bottle, a sandwich pack and a till receipt from Woolly Edge service station. That was timed shortly after 6 p.m. on Friday the 18th of November. By recovering the vehicle within 24 hours, we allowed our forensics people to go through the vehicle with a fine-tooth comb. It gave us some really good forensic opportunities in relation to identifying who'd used that vehicle on the Friday. I was able to identify 3 people who I believe were responsible for that robbery.
They were Mustafa Jama, Mustafa Jama, and his brother, Mustafa Jama. These were now the most wanted men in Britain. But where had they gone?
Can I have a kiss?
Sharon Beshenivsky was not just a police officer who lost her life doing the job she loved. She was also a devoted mum.
Mummy.
She was killed on her daughter Lydia's 4th birthday. Now her husband Paul has to adapt to the family life they'd planned, without her at the centre.
Our future plans was, that she could work, I could work a little bit less, and we sort of always wanted to sort of have the sort of country life. We thought it'd be a better life, bringing the kids up with a country life. It was a dream home. We sort of bought it sort of in the summer, and all the plans that we had of what we were going to do, and Sharon were even talking about, Lydia having a marquee on lawn for a wedding and all this sort of thing. It was sort of all everything pre-planned of what you're going to do, and then everything sort of fell to pieces.
Every murder is a challenge for the police, but when one of their own is killed, they are very determined to catch who did it. In West Yorkshire, detectives worked night and day to track down Sharon's killers, and just 1 week after the murder, were confident they knew who they were looking for. They were Mustafa Jama, Mustafa Jama, and his brother Mustafa. All members of a London-based criminal gang.
We've got 3 very dangerous individuals who are on the run, who demonstrated the total disregard for the police by shooting 2 of them already. So it's a genuine fear that we have that clearly they could attack other police officers if they were cornered.
The gang's base was an estate in North London called Graham Park. They called themselves the Thug Fam. Mustafa Jama was their leader. On his shoulder he carried a 5-star tattoo to show he was in charge. His life revolved around violent crime. In this rap song he sings about guns, gangs and killing a cop. His key lieutenants were Somalian asylum seekers Yusuf and Mustafa Jama. They both had a string of convictions. Ironically, Mustafa had been allowed to stay in the UK because to return him to Somalia would have breached his human rights. The gang were not afraid to use guns. Detectives believe this is Mustafa Jama robbing a North London off-licence at gunpoint. 7 months later, he would travel to Bradford to carry out a similar attack. Before escaping, incredibly, he fires his gun indiscriminately. In Bradford, witnesses said that Shah carried a 9mm pistol and a Mac-10 submachine gun was carried by one of the brothers. Ballistics at the crime scene revealed both weapons were fired. Police believe the Mac-10 jammed, preventing more people being killed. Both of these weapons are widely available among criminal gangs in the UK. For unarmed police officers, they are an increasing threat.
9mm calibre pistols are probably about the most widespread pistols available to the criminal fraternity. There's an awful lot of them on the black market that come in from, Eastern Europe, and it's quite easy to pick one up, obviously, if you have the right contacts. Pistols like this are so iconic, even pointing one at someone can be quite intimidating.
For Sharon and Teresa to be confronted by a weapon like this is unimaginable. The other gun was even more sinister.
This is a Mac-10 machine pistol, capable of firing 1,100 rounds per minute. That's almost 20 every second. Very much a gun of choice with gangs. It's become a bit of a symbol of handheld firepower at quite an extreme level. When fired, the gun actually rocks around and the rounds will tend to spray everywhere, hence the term spray and pray. It's very indiscriminate.
These were the weapons in the hands of the 3 fugitives now on the run. Police forces across the UK were put on high alert. For 7 days, nothing. Then, 100 miles away in Birmingham, a breakthrough. West Midlands police were called to a reported gang rape.
We've got sort of 10 people that have been arrested for rape. We've got a victim that was very traumatised as well, so we're having to deal with her. We've got a number of scenes that we had to secure evidence from, and also we had to recover forensic evidence from all of the people that were in custody.
One of the suspects was taken to the cells by PC Alan Brockbank. He's seen here, booking him in.
He had his hat right down, so all we could actually see was just his eyes. When he took all his clothing off, he's totally calm, totally passive, not looking at anybody. But the young WPC who was with me turned to me and said, "That's that person that's on the briefing." And she gave the biggest smile I've ever seen.
The police suspected the man they had was Mustafa Jama. He told them he was Abdi Ahmed.
And we had to try and work out whether that was the name he'd used before, and then really just try and work out a best way of confirming it.
When the police want to establish a suspect's identity quickly, they use live scan. This is a computer system that can instantly read and compare fingerprints to the millions held on the police national computer.
We specifically asked to be compared against Mustafa Jama's details, because although he was giving false details at the time, we believed he was obviously Mustafa Jama.
Would this be the man they were looking for?
About 10 minutes later the results came through, and it came back on the confirmation page showing it's Mustafa Jama with the correct date of birth, obviously born in Somalia, and obviously this is the point where we knew we got the right man.
That was like every best arrest you could ever wish to. I don't think there was a police officer in the country who didn't want to arrest that person.
West Yorkshire police had the first of their 3 key suspects, but he wasn't talking. The evidence against him was mounting. A witness had identified him at the scene of the shooting. His fingerprints and DNA were found inside the robber's car. And just 3 hours after the robbery, he was on CCTV at Woolly Edge Services on the M1. This video shows him buying the items found in the car. Mustafa Jama was charged with Sharon's murder. Police feared the other 2 wanted men, Mustafa Jama and Muzakkar Shah, would leave the country. Determined to stop that happening, a team of detectives revisited the evidence.
One of the things we always like to do is to review the CCTV work that's been recovered. And what that gives us is opportunities to identify other potential witnesses, other suspects. And this came as a little bit of a shock to me, because they realised that there was probably a second car involved.
Detectives spotted a black Mercedes sports car following the Toyota RAV4 out of Bradford after the shooting. On closer examination, they then noticed a green Toyota Corolla was always close by.
We'd gone from having 3 suspects and 1 vehicle to have now identified 3 potential vehicles that were involved in the robbery itself.
Only 3 men were seen leaving the travel agents. Only 3 men were being hunted by the police. So who were driving the other cars? How many of them were there? And how were they involved? The investigation was becoming more complex by the hour.